I'll make it an original, commentary-driven rewrite rather than closely reproducing the competitor's wording. I'll also tone down unverified allegations and inflammatory claims so it stays more advertiser-friendly while keeping the controversy and emotional tension. Here's part one, around 800 words, in natural everyday English with a stronger opening. What if the biggest story coming out of this World Cup wasn't actually about who lifted the trophy? What if it was about everything that happened after the final whistle? Because now, players, former footballers, coaches, referees, and even celebrities are speaking about moments they believe crossed the line. And the more people who talk, the more questions fans are starting to ask. This isn't just about one argument or one bad moment. It's about a series of incidents that created a massive debate around Argentina, their behavior, and the way some of their players handled the pressure of the tournament. And one of the loudest voices to enter that conversation was Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Speaking after the final, Zlatan reportedly made it clear that he had very little sympathy for the behavior he saw from certain players. His comments were blunt, emotional, and completely in character for someone who has never been afraid to say exactly what he thinks. But Zlatan wasn't alone. Across the football world, other legends and former players began giving their opinions. Some criticized the attitude they saw on the pitch. Others questioned individual decisions. And some simply argued that no matter how intense a World Cup becomes, there should always be a limit to how players behave. That distinction is important. Football is emotional. Everyone understands that. Players spend years preparing for these moments, and when a final is on the line, emotions can boil over. But losing control can change the entire conversation. One of the strongest reactions came from Rodri, who found himself at the center of a heated moment after the match. Instead of responding with more anger, his message was much simpler. You can lose a final, but you shouldn't lose your discipline. That idea quickly became one of the biggest talking points surrounding the tournament, because when the stakes are this high, millions of people are watching. Young fans are watching, future players are watching, and the behavior of football stars can influence how people see the sport itself. Roy Keane also had his say. Keane has never been someone who hides his opinion, and his message was basically that if you dish out the pressure and the provocation, prepare to receive it when the situation changes. For him, football is about competition, but competition comes with consequences. Gary Neville took a slightly different approach. He acknowledged the quality and competitiveness of Argentina, while also making it clear that he was disappointed by some of what he saw. And perhaps that's what made the criticism more powerful. These weren't necessarily people who hated Argentina. Many of them respected the team, they respected the talent, they respected the intensity, but they were separating the football from the behavior. Joe Hart also criticized what he described as unacceptable conduct, while other former players questioned whether the celebrations and confrontations had gone too far. The debate became even more complicated when the discussion turned toward Lionel Messi. Some commentators defended Messi, pointing out that he showed respect to opposing players and congratulated them after the match. Others weren't convinced. They argued that, as one of the team's biggest leaders, Messi also carries responsibility for the overall culture of the group. In their view, standing on the sidelines while teammates become involved in heated confrontations isn't enough if you're considered the leader of the team. That argument is obviously subjective, but it shows just how divided the football world became. And then there was the criticism surrounding the final itself. Spain's performance was praised by many analysts as one of the most tactically impressive displays of the tournament. Their organization, pressing, and ability to control the game made it difficult for Argentina to create clear opportunities. Some former players described it as a complete tactical shutdown. Instead of focusing on the controversy, they focused on the football. And that might have been the most damaging criticism of all, because when a team loses a final, people expect the discussion to center around tactics, missed chances, or individual mistakes. But when the conversation becomes more about arguments and confrontations than the football itself, something has clearly changed. The criticism didn't stop with the final. Earlier in the tournament, several controversial refereeing decisions had already created frustration among players and fans. One of the most talked about moments came during Argentina's knockout match against Egypt. A controversial decision involving a goal sparked furious reactions, with Egyptian players and officials questioning whether the decision was handled correctly. The frustration became so intense that Egypt's coach publicly criticized the officiating. Meanwhile, Switzerland's players also found themselves involved in a major controversy after a red card that many people believed was harsh. One Swiss veteran was caught on camera expressing his frustration and suggesting that the tournament felt predetermined. Now, that doesn't prove that anything was actually manipulated. There is a huge difference between a player making an emotional comment in the heat of the moment and having actual evidence of wrongdoing. But the fact that players were willing to say these things publicly shows just how much tension had built throughout the competition. And that's where the bigger story begins. Because by the time the final arrived, fans weren't just watching a football match. They were watching a team surrounded by controversy, criticism, and enormous expectations. And when the final whistle blew, every emotional moment suddenly became part of the story. The arguments, the celebrations, the reactions, the criticism, and the questions. And as more people started speaking, the debate became impossible to ignore. But the most surprising voices were still to come. Here's part 2, continuing directly from part 1 in the same natural, emotionally engaging style. I've kept the strongest claims framed as opinions or reported reactions rather than presenting unverified allegations as facts. The most surprising voices were still to come, because the controversy surrounding Argentina wasn't limited to footballers and former players. Celebrities and public figures from completely different backgrounds also began reacting to the events surrounding the tournament. One of the biggest names to enter the conversation was Samuel L. Jackson. His comments sparked a huge reaction online, with people debating whether celebrities should even get involved in football controversies in the first place. But the reason his comments attracted so much attention was because they connected the football debate to a much bigger issue: the behavior of fans and players. Over the years, Argentine football has been involved in several controversies surrounding offensive chants and discriminatory behavior. Some incidents have resulted in investigations, apologies, and disciplinary action. But critics argue that the problem keeps coming back. That doesn't mean every Argentine player or fan should be blamed for the actions of a few individuals. That's important. Millions of Argentine fans simply love football and support their national team with passion. But when repeated incidents happen, the spotlight naturally becomes bigger. And that's exactly what happened during this World Cup. Some fans were accused of making offensive gestures. Others were involved in controversial exchanges with supporters from different countries. And every time something happened, social media amplified it within minutes. One incident could become a global story before the match had even finished. That's the reality of modern football. A player makes a gesture, a fan shouts something, someone records it, and suddenly millions of people are discussing it. That's why players and teams have to be more careful than ever, because today's football stars aren't just athletes. They're global personalities. Every action can be analyzed, every reaction can be replayed, and every mistake can follow them for years. The same thing happened with Enzo Fernandez. His previous controversial video involving an offensive chant became a major international story and led to widespread criticism. The situation was investigated, and Fernandez later apologized. But the incident continued to be discussed because it raised questions about the responsibility that comes with representing a national team. When you're wearing your country's shirt, everything you do becomes bigger than you. That's the pressure these players live under. And that's also why critics believe they have to be held to a higher standard. But there's another side to this story. Some people believe the criticism toward Argentina has gone too far. They argue that football is becoming increasingly sensitive, with every emotional reaction being treated as a major scandal. They point out that players from many countries have lost their tempers, argued with opponents, and made mistakes. So why does Argentina receive so much attention? That's a fair question. And the answer may simply be that Argentina is one of the biggest football nations on the planet. When you're at the top, everything you do gets magnified. The same players who receive praise when they win are going to face enormous criticism when they lose. And Argentina's status makes that criticism even louder. Then there's Lionel Messi. For many fans, Messi remains almost untouchable. He's one of the greatest players the sport has ever seen. His achievements speak for themselves. But being one of the greatest players doesn't mean you're immune from criticism. During the tournament, some fans questioned his reactions to certain moments. Others defended him, arguing that every player is entitled to emotions and that nobody can control everything happening around them. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Messi cannot be held responsible for every action taken by a teammate. At the same time, as captain and leader, his behavior naturally receives more attention. That's simply the reality of being the face of a national team. And perhaps that's why this entire controversy became so emotional. People weren't just discussing football, they were discussing leadership, sportsmanship, respect, and what it really means to represent your country. The final itself only added fuel to the debate. Spain's victory was celebrated as a triumph of tactical discipline and collective football. Their players focused on the result, while the celebrations became another major talking point. Meanwhile, Argentina left the tournament facing difficult questions about their behavior and their image. But here's the thing. Football history is full of teams that were hated before they became respected. Teams that were criticized for their style. Teams that were accused of being too aggressive, too emotional, too arrogant. And sometimes those same teams eventually became legends. That's why it's too early to say what Argentina's legacy from this tournament will ultimately be. Maybe people will remember the controversies, maybe they'll remember the final, maybe they'll remember the tactical battle, or maybe years from now, all of this will simply become another chapter in football history. But one thing is certain, the conversation has already changed. Players are speaking more openly. Former stars are refusing to stay silent. Fans are demanding more accountability, and social media has made it almost impossible for controversial moments to disappear. That's the new reality of football. Nothing stays on the pitch anymore. A confrontation can become an international headline, a celebration can trigger a debate, and one emotional decision can change the way millions of people see a player forever. So, was Argentina treated unfairly by the criticism, or did some of their players and fans genuinely cross a line? That's the question football fans will continue arguing about, because there are two sides to this story. On one side, you have people who believe intense competition is part of football, and that emotions should be expected. On the other, you have people who believe that no amount of pressure can justify disrespectful behavior. And maybe that's why this World Cup has created such a powerful reaction. The debate isn't really about one team anymore. It's about what we expect from the biggest stars in the biggest moments, because winning matters, losing matters. But how you behave when everything is on the line may matter just as much. And that's the message several football legends have been trying to make. You can fight for every ball, you can celebrate every goal, you can show passion, you can be competitive. But when the final whistle comes, there has to be a moment when the competition ends, because that's when the real character of a player is revealed. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson from everything that happened. Trophies eventually collect dust, records are eventually broken, but the way you carry yourself when millions of people are watching, that can stay with you forever. So now the question is for you. Do you think the criticism of Argentina is justified, or do you think the football world has been too harsh on the team? Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more football stories, controversies, and the biggest moments from around the world.